Hi there. It is Chris with Velocity Labs. We have a lesson for you today, so just sit back, relax, and put your learning cap on because here we go. Let's get started. We are going to set up backups for Artemis 1, and this was a new machine we recently added. We have not set any configured Insight to monitor the backups. The backups are installed. They are Cloudberry server, and it's a backup that creates a full and then creates incrementals. And Cloudberry, also known as MSP360, this is the server edition that I'm using here. We're going to do something a little new. We're going to create this in the designer. It doesn't exist in Insight as I speak today. And one of the things that is a little different about the Cloudberry or MSP360 is it creates a bunch of subfolders. I'm sure they've got a pattern to it, but if you see me start digging into this, and you'll see, hey, that looks like there's a FAT volume, an NTFS volume, another NTFS, and for each one, it's got looks like a dated folder, date and time, and inside of that is the actual backup file. And their backup extension is this .cb revision. So that's what we'll look for. We've got this set to run every couple of hours. I'm just going to set this up to monitor it for make sure we've got new images created daily. And with all that said, let's get started. The first thing we want to do is we're going to create an extension. And the extension is that CB revision that we saw. We don't have a program yet, so we'll just leave it blank. From the designer now, let's create a program. And we'll call this, we're going to name this whatever they had it named. So Cloudberry Backup Server Edition. The extension that will be used is the one we just created, CB Revision. And this is where we want to check the box to make sure it's going through all the subfolders. If this isn't checked, it's just going to check the path that we create, and it'll stop at that root level. By checking this, we say just keep looking and look for files of this type in any one of these folders. So we'll create the program. Now we do have an existing program in here. You'll see MSP360. The MSP360 is it uses the API to talk to their web portal and gathering the information that way. The edition that we're using today, we're not sending to the cloud. It's not through an MSP technically. It's really just it's all stored here on this server, and that particular program does not do that. So with the Cloudberry program that we're creating now, it is different than the MSP360. I just want to create some clarity here so there isn't confusion why I'm not just using that program. Looks like we've got a backup going now in Cloudberry Backup Server Edition. So we've got a program, we've tied it to our extension, and now what we need to do, we need to create a filter. Let's open one of these up and examine it. We're not going to need a filter, and I'll tell you why. So the filter is designed so you can examine a file name, and by examining the file name, if you can, based on how that file name is structured, pick out certain components of it. That's what the filter allows you to do. And so in this case, this would be a StorageCraft file. That's the sample file that's loaded up, and all the regular expressions that were tied to this. So just very quickly, I'll show you what I mean. When I hit test, it's going to, anything that matched the group A regular expressions will be in yellow, group B will be in purple, and group C will be in green. And when we look at these, group A, I designated as a volume, which is correct, and group B is designated as a backup set, which is correct for StorageCraft. And for group C, this is the backup set member. And again, we can see we've identified that correctly with this filter. The reason we don't need this for Cloudberry server is because when we dig into one of these files, we have no control over what the file name is created. So they seem to have some sort of numbering scheme that's tied to these, just 1, 2, 3. Not a whole lot to gain from that, so we just simply don't need a filter in this case. What we do want to have is we do want to have a file sentry. And a file sentry, you want to think of, this is your little guard, your sentry that is watching for new backup files to show up and be created, and gives them a time frame to be looking for them. What kind of file is it? Well, we only have one file type with the Cloudberry backups that I have seen, really, that is of real concern, and that's the CB revision file. So we're going to act on that, and we're going to look for it daily. We could change that, but let's get started making an extension. Now here, every warehouse has a grace period assigned to it. By default, it's 48 hours. If something doesn't arrive that you've set up a file sentry for within 48 hours and it's set to this grace period to use the warehouse server or path setting, it will use either of those in precedence, and it uses them based on the more specific it is, the more that'll be the grace period that's used. And so in this case, we do list up here the order for you. The least specific would be the warehouse. So if I set a file sentry, that would be more specific. But if I went all the way down to the path itself and also set a grace period, the one that is set on that path is the most specific, and it would override any previous settings. So for us, 48 hours is a little bit too much. I have these backups to run every couple hours. Let's just pick 2 hours. The extension we created a little bit earlier, and the file frequency identifier is really trying to look at a name of a file and pick out characteristics of it using file extensions, or excuse me, file characteristics, file name characteristics to identify, hey, what kind of file is it? In this regard, Cloudberry Backup, very easy. It doesn't have any kind of file name structure to pick anything out of. Whereas if you think of, if you're familiar with StorageCraft, they have in their file name a -cd is a consolidated daily, a -cd-cw is a consolidated weekly, and a consolidated monthly is a -cd-cm. I hope I remembered all those right. But so we can take that file name and we can pick out characteristics of the file name and identify, hey, this is a daily file, a weekly file, monthly file. We don't have the ability to do that with this program. So it's going to make it very simple for us. We're just going to put this file in here that we'll test against. And the filter, look, we're just going to look for that CB revision. That's the backup file. So we will just type in CB. Actually, let's be very specific. CB revision. Like that. And so we'll test. We should get that entire end. Again, it's not doing anything other than saying, when you see a file that has this in the file name, that is a daily backup file. We'll create that extension, or excuse me, that file sentry. Let's set ourselves up a path, or backup path. We will use the topmost level for this server. So I'm just going to copy and paste this out now. If I could encourage you to do anything with Insight, the one that I would say and highly recommend that you always do is to copy and paste this path. Typing this path in will come back to bite you at some point. So we've copied, or we've pasted in our path that we had copied out. We tied it to the new program that we created. The warehouse is Artemis 1, which is the server we happen to be working on right now. And the managed server is also Artemis 1. I refer to this as a hybrid server. This is going to be active. It's going to be billable. It is not an offsite copy because it is local to this machine. And monitor volumes, well, we're going to check this. We just talked about the file name did not allow us to create any effective filter to pick out things like the monitor, or excuse me, the volume that we're backing up. So the names are very simplistic, and we just didn't have the ability to do that with this one. So we'll skip that and create the path. And we should see all of this update. Yep. We'll give this a little time. If I go back to the dashboard, you can see as I refresh all this, Artemis 1 is on the bottom two graphs on the right. They have no data yet. It hasn't pushed anything to the cloud to the Insight or Evelocity cloud to be processed yet. So we've got several days of data here from the machines that were already placed in and syncing with the cloud. When we return, you're going to see we have data for Artemis 1 as well. Welcome back. We have added in Artemis 1. We created a custom backup program that was not in Insight today, which was for Cloudberry Backup Server Edition. We've given that, we kicked off a manual collection and sent it and synced it to the Velocity cloud. And we've given it some time to process. And so what we're doing now, we just want to see, do we have billable data showing for this server now? Now this server belongs to, and we find that based on the managed server. I believe it belongs to Artemis Company. It would make sense, but let's confirm. So Artemis 1 is tied to Artemis Company. So we should see our storage for the company as a whole increase. And we should also see some storage show up for Artemis 1. Because it's a managed server, it's also a warehouse server. It is storing images on it. It's storing its backup files on itself. So it is performing both roles. And let's just refresh this page and see what we've got. So we had 17.33 here. We have 18.33, and that tells me it should be about 1 gigabyte. And that's exactly what we've got. So we can see that not only have we successfully synced information, the charts have updated, and a great success. We've added the server, we've created a program, it's pulling that data in.
I've had a great time showing you this information today. I hope you found it informative. This is Chris with Evelocity Labs, signing off. Have a great day.